I heard a sound I'd never heard before, and I was never the same person again. Do you believe? God has no form, no white beard, no throne in the sky, no booming voice casting judgment from above. Have you ever pictured God as a person? I did too, until the day I died. My name is Noah Carter. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a monk. And I'm not a psychic. I used to be someone who didn't believe in anything except the strength of my own two hands and the constant struggle to survive in this world. I died on a winter night. No one cried. No candles. No sad music. There was only one thing, a sound that didn't belong to this world. I've heard just about everything in my life, gunshots. My mother's scream was the day my father walked out. The crunch of metal as my car slammed into a traffic light. The pounding drum in my chest every time I thought I was about to make it, and the hollow echo that followed every time failure came crashing in. But that night, the sound wasn't a sound. It was a presence, a vibration, a whisper from far away, yet somehow it echoed through my bones, down to the marrow of who I was. It's not time, but it could be. You choose. I used to think I understood what sound was, but this didn't come through my ears. It resounded within me as if someone had just called out the name of my soul, after decades of me leaving it outside the door. I don't know why you're watching this video. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you're asking yourself, what comes after death? Or maybe you're just curious, not sure you even believe in things like a soul. I get it. I was there too. I was the last person on earth who would have believed in any kind of afterlife. Until I went there, not with my body, but with something I had never touched, even though it had always been there, the light inside me that had long been asleep. Before I tell you about my death and what I saw beyond the veil of time, energy, and God, there's one thing you need to understand. I didn't die because I wanted to. I died because I had forgotten how to live. Have you ever lived without knowing what you were living for? Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen someone breathing, talking, smiling, but inside, you felt as empty as an abandoned house? I used to think death was a period. But after that night, I realized it's a colon. Because that's when everything started. Every question I had ever asked, is there a God? Who am I? Why do I have to suffer? Can I be forgiven? They didn't disappear. They were waiting on the other side. And then, the answers started to come. But what changed me forever, what I couldn't unsee, couldn't unknow, wasn't the light. Wasn't the angel. It was something unbelievably simple, and yet it turned my entire worldview upside down. I am a part of God. And so are you. You don't need to go to a temple. You don't need to read any holy book. You don't even have to believe a single thing I'm about to say. As long as you're still breathing, as long as something in you is quietly wondering, who am I in this vast universe? Then maybe, just maybe, you're starting to remember. Because I had forgotten too. I used to think I was just a lucky addict who didn't die. I used to believe I was someone nobody needed, so why bother trying to live any better? Until the moment I left my body, and for the first time in my life, I truly saw myself. Not with my eyes, but with a pure, wordless knowing. I was still me, even after my heart had stopped beating. And then, I met someone, or more accurately, I met a being, a light with a soul. I gave him a name, Eli, because I needed to call him something. Eli wasn't like anyone I'd ever known, and he was the one who guided me on the journey, through the energy field of the earth. To see God not as a figure, but as a vast field of energy that holds everything together. To hear the sound of the planets. And finally, to meet myself again, in a form I never could have imagined. But for you to truly understand what happened after I died, you need to know who I used to be. And why didn't my death happen because of fate, but because I had slowly, silently shut the door of my own heart. In the next part, I'll tell you about my past. About being a child growing up among the living yet feeling forgotten, as if I had already died. And how, without even knowing it, I began destroying myself piece by piece. Not realizing that I was calling out to God in a very different kind of prayer. I died long before my heart stopped beating. Most people think death happens in a single moment. When the heart stops, when the brain shuts down, when the body goes still. But no one talks about the kind of death that happens in silence, in a father's empty stare, in a mother's broken promises, in the dinners where no one looks each other in the eye. My name is Noah. And I died when I was 8 years old. I grew up in a house with walls, a roof, and a bed, but no warmth. My father was the kind of man who controlled with silence. He didn't yell, he withdrew. And when he withdrew, the whole house turned cold like winter in the middle of July. My mother was a woman always busy suffering, sacrificing, busy wearing down beneath the weight of being the perfect mom. I was the only one in the house who had free time. Free to hear stories that were never told. Free to wait at the dinner table while no one asked, "How was your day?" Free to look in the mirror and silently wonder, if I disappeared, would anyone notice? I once wrote a letter to God. I don't remember what it said, just the last line. If you can hear me, then please do something. I tucked it under my pillow. No one ever found it, not even him. By the time I was 12, I had started learning how to not need anyone. I taught myself how to hide tears behind a smile. I learned how to do everything on my own, so no one would ever feel burdened by me. I cooked for myself. I ripped up the messy little drawings. I once made it to get attention, because no one ever taped them to the fridge anyway. Then one day I realized, if no one wanted me, maybe I'd just disappear. Not by dying, but by becoming invisible. I slowly found other souls like me that were also falling, with no one reaching out to catch them. We started smoking, drinking, skipping class, swearing, and messing around. We weren't trying to be heroes. We just needed somewhere we wouldn't be looked through like we didn't exist. At 17, I got expelled from school. No one was surprised. Not even me. I thought I'd feel free. But the truth? It was like stepping into an open coffin, and I had climbed in myself. I did odd jobs, crashed on friends' couches, ate what I could, laughed like it was all a joke just to cover up the fact that I had never truly felt like I belonged anywhere. And then came the final thing, drugs. Not to get high, but to forget. To forget that my mother never asked what I needed. To forget that my father left and never came back. To forget that I once dreamed of being an artist, but all I had done was paint my life in strokes of black. That night, the night I died, wasn't the first time I used. But it was the first time. I wanted to go further than usual. I wasn't trying to end my life. I just didn't care anymore. Do you know that feeling? It's not pain. It's not fear. It's emptiness. So empty that even if you're standing in the middle of a crowd, you still feel like a ghost no one can see. And that night, I floated. Not up to heaven, but into a weightless state, because I had no more hope anchoring me to the ground. As I lay there on the floor, eyes closed, heart pounding out of rhythm, no one called my name. No one held my hand. No one knew this was the final moment of a boy named Noah, who had once just wanted to be loved. And then, I left. No blinding light. No angels singing. Just this sudden knowing that I was no longer lying on the floor. I was standing looking down at my body. And I understood. So this is the moment I die. But then, why am I still here? I could see everything, but not with my eyes. I felt the room. I felt the music cutting through the air like a blade. I felt my soul asking, why me? And in that exact moment, something appeared. Not a person. Not a light. Just a vibration, as if someone had tapped directly on the frequency of my soul. You're not done yet. Unless you choose to be. I didn't understand. I didn't know who or what it was. I didn't know where I was. But I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the same. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when I truly died, and for the first time, I saw myself from the outside, as if I were a soul standing between two worlds. And you'll understand why there are some things science can't explain, but the soul remembers perfectly. I watched myself die, but I've never felt more alive. No one ever told me that when you die, you're still aware. There were no angels holding name tags. No elevator going up or down. Just a strange awakening when you suddenly realize you're looking at yourself from the outside. I saw my body lying still on the floor. Arms limp. The chest no longer rises and falls. Around me were the same friends, too far gone to notice. They laughed and talked as I collapsed. Then faded, like a scene with the sound turned off. I saw it all, but not with my eyes. I felt everything. I felt the sound, like razors slicing through the air. I felt the temperature of the room, but not with my skin. I felt myself without needing to touch flesh or bone. It was strange, but not frightening. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I was just surprised. So I'm still me, even without a body? I was floating in midair, not rising, not falling. Just moving like a thought with direction. I had no hands, no feet, but I had a face, memories, and feelings. And the scariest part? I felt more real than I ever had. In the physical world, I had spent years struggling just to feel like I existed, using alcohol to go numb, using drugs to feel different, using smiles to hide the tears, using anger to fill the emptiness. But here, I was just me. No disguise. No performance. Nothing to hide behind. I didn't know where I was. The space around me felt like it was made of liquid light, no ceiling, no floor. Only presence. I was present. And I knew it. Then a sound. Not a clear voice. Not words. Just a vibration like the lingering tone of a bell you couldn't see. It didn't enter through my ears. It moved straight through my soul. Not yet, but you can choose. I didn't understand. I didn't know who or what it was. But I knew I was being given a choice. And the moment that thought formed, the space around me began to shift. I was no longer in that room. I had drifted into another place not by walking, but by pure intention. I remembered once asking someone when I was still alive, if there's an afterlife, how come no one ever comes back to tell us? Now I understood. It's not that no one comes back. It's that no one believes them when they do. I began to see shapes around me. Not people. Not ghosts. Just forms of energy like streams of light, each with its color, moving gently like waves. And then I realized something extraordinary. Each light had its sound. Not voices, but frequencies. Some were deep and resonant. Some were high and airy. Some sounded like ancient instruments. Others like the whisper of wind. We were a symphony of souls. I looked at myself, no longer flesh and bone, but a blue strand of light vibrating gently in the vast space. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was being guided by something that felt both completely foreign and deeply familiar. And then, I saw him, a being brighter than all the others, not blinding but clear, as if everything else was a mistake and he alone was real. He had no face, but I knew he was looking at me. He had no mouth, but I heard him speak. Noah, you're not alone anymore. I didn't ask who he was. I just knew he was the one who had called me home. As he moved closer, the space around me softened. The resonant frequencies faded into stillness. And in that stillness, I began to remember things I never knew I had forgotten. I hadn't died. I had just started to truly live. In the next part, I'll tell you about Eli, the being who guided me through the energy fields of Earth, across dimensions, and helped me see God in a way no one had ever taught me. And you'll understand, God doesn't look like any image we've ever been shown. But He is always there. I saw the earth breathe, and realized God isn't in the sky, He's in every frequency. When I first saw Him, the being I now call Eli, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel like I was meeting a stranger. On the contrary, I felt peace. A deep, settling peace, as if I had met Him somewhere long ago, in some nameless dimension, buried deep in the fabric of eternity. Eli had no face, no human voice, no fixed form. He was like a light that knew how to smile, a living consciousness that didn't need a body to express love. He didn't ask if I was ready. He simply reached out not with hands, but with energy. And in that instant, I understood. There's no going back to who I was. But if I dare to go forward, I'll see things no one's ever spoken of. I nodded even though I had no head to nod with. And that's when the journey began. We didn't fly like in a sci-fi movie. We moved through vibration. It was like becoming part of a song, and suddenly being the sound itself. No more physical form. No gravity. No time. In front of me was the earth, not like a satellite image, but like a living, breathing organism. I saw currents of energy flowing from its core to emotional centers like chakras on the body of a colossal being. The earth wasn't a planet. It was a soul. I asked Eli not with words, but with consciousness. What is this? He answered, this is Gaia. Not just a planet, but a soul. And then I heard Gaia. Not with ears, but through a field of pure emotion like a wordless lullaby from a mother on the edge of fading, because her children had stopped listening. I felt the pain of the earth. Not from carbon emissions or plastic waste, but from something far deeper, the broken connection between humanity and their souls. Gaia wasn't angry. She wasn't punishing us. She was grieving. You have forgotten who you are. And in doing so, you've wounded the mother who's held you since you were just a flicker of light. I wept, not with tears, but with my soul. I had littered carelessly, lived as if the world existed solely to serve me. But now I understood. I am a single cell in the body of the universe. And if I am sick, the whole system feels the pain. We continued drifting beyond the earth, through layers of energy, like woven lattices of light stretching across dimensions. And then Eli showed me. Some souls hadn't moved on, trapped in emotions like hatred, greed, and regret. And some souls had transcended, now serving as transmission stations of divine love, sending energy back to earth. I asked, who are they? Eli replied, Some call them ascended masters. But they were once like you, wounded, lost, dying in darkness until they found the light. We stopped at a junction, a convergence point where all energetic layers met. I called it the frequency node of God. There was no throne, no judgment table, no angel checking names in a book. There was only a light, so pure, so undeniable, it didn't need to prove itself. I asked, "Is this God?" And Eli said something I will never forget. "This is everything. Not a being, but the being. And you are a part of it." In that moment, every energetic cell within me began to vibrate, as if my name had just been called for the very first time. I no longer felt worthless. I no longer felt like someone who got left behind. I was a ray of light once hidden, now remembering the way home. I began to see slow-motion flashes, moments when I hugged someone with my whole heart, handshakes offered without an agenda, times I let go of anger and felt a layer of my soul grow lighter. And Eli said, "That is God within you. Every action born from love. It's a moment you touch the source." I used to think that to meet God, I had to climb a mountain, recite sacred texts, and pass through trials. Now I know, all it takes is a genuine hug. A quiet act of forgiveness no one ever sees. A simple kindness that no one applauds. All of it is a form of God. In the next part, I'll share what Eli showed me about time, the soul, and why you can feel completely alone even while living among billions. And you'll begin to understand, time is not linear. And maybe, just maybe, you've already met yourself before, without even knowing it. God isn't in the sky. He's in the frequency your heart emits. I used to picture God as an old man in the clouds. A person. A judge. A distant, powerful being. I used to think it was either he exists or he doesn't. Black or white. Believe or deny. But standing before that frequency convergence point where all energy is returned to a single pulse, I knew I'd been wrong. God isn't someone. He is everything happening in the stillness of perfect presence. Eli brought me into a strange space, one with no shape, no sound, no defined color. Just a field of vibration, as if every frequency in the universe was merging into a wordless symphony. I asked, "Where are we?" Eli replied, "This is where time is no longer a straight line." And then, I saw, not with eyes, but with a deep, unified knowing. I didn't see my life like a movie. I saw it as an energetic map of each decision, each emotion, each vibration I had ever released, leaving a frequency imprint on the landscape of my soul. There was no judgment. No one is saying right or wrong. There was just clarity. Everything lay bare. Time, Eli said, is not what you think. It's not past, present, future. It's layers. And you are living in many of them all at once. I began to see other versions of myself. A Noah standing on a stage, healing others with his story. A Noah living far away, painting in a small cabin by the woods. A Noah who never took the drugs that night and lived an entirely different life. I wasn't imagining it. I was seeing it. All of it was real. All of it was happening on different vibrational planes. I stood there stunned. "So what's real?" I asked. Eli smiled, not with his lips, but with frequency. "All of it is real. But you can only touch what you're vibrating in harmony with." That's when it hit me. I wasn't being punished when I fell into addiction. I had simply fallen into the lower layers of myself, because that's the frequency my soul had been putting out. I asked, "So do we have a destiny?" Eli answered, "Yes. But not a fate written in stone. It's a collection of possibilities, based on the energy your soul emits. Want to change the outcome? Change your frequency." I began to remember the days I lived for others. I felt lighter. The days I held on to anger, the world around me felt darker, heavier. And the moments I forgave, even in silence, it was like stepping into a completely different world. Then Eli showed me a vision. Each person is a musical instrument. You can play in tune or out of rhythm. You can create harmony or static. But no matter what, you can't stop vibrating. The question is, what melody are you sending out into the universe? I remembered sitting in the middle of a crowd and feeling completely alone. Having everything but feeling utterly empty. I thought I was different. Turns out, I was just out of tune. And Eli said, asterisk, when you're hurting, it doesn't mean you're broken. When you're lost, it doesn't mean you're bad. It just means your soul is sending out a signal. This is not where you're meant to stay. Asterisk, I had once asked, why did I have to go through all that pain? I asked. And the answer came so simply, so clearly. Because you can't teach light unless you've lived through the dark. I wasn't broken. I wasn't disposable. I wasn't worthless. I was a piece of God on the journey of remembering who I am. And so are you. In the next part, I'll share with you a mysterious encounter I had with the future version of myself, the one who had fully awakened. And you'll see why. Your soul may have already returned to wake you up, and you just didn't know it. I met someone who looked just like me and realized IT was the soul version of who I'd always wanted to become. I thought the journey was over. I thought that seeing God as energy, understanding time as frequency, and the soul as a living symphony was the final revelation. But I was wrong. What came next? It was the hardest part. Not the traveling, not the out-of-body experience, but facing myself without a single mask left to hide behind. Eli brought me to a place without a name. I can only call it the room of light. There were no chairs, no ceiling, no walls, just pure space, woven layers of luminous strands, like a gateway made of living light. At the center of the room was a circle of light, and surrounding it stood tall beings, not tall in a physical sense, but in the sheer magnitude of their energetic presence. I didn't know who they were, but I knew. They knew everything about me. There was no judgment, no interrogation, only a compassionate presence and a truth so clear it couldn't be denied. They didn't introduce themselves, but I understood instantly. This was the Soul Council, the high-vibration beings who had been present when I created my soul blueprint for this lifetime. And then, a screen of energy opened before me. I didn't watch my life like a slow-motion movie. I relived it moment by moment, through my own emotions and the emotions of others. I saw my 7-year-old self was saying something cruel to a classmate just to fit in, and I felt the sting in his heart. My 16-year-old self was lying to my mother before running away, and I felt her helpless sorrow, the pain of a mother who didn't know how to reach her child. My 23-year-old self holding a friend in shock after they'd lost a loved one, and I felt the warmth my arms had radiated without a single word spoken. Every action, no matter how small, created an energetic ripple. A simple smile could pull a soul on the edge of giving up back toward the light. A harsh word could drag a fragile spirit down a few more vibrational layers. And then, I saw him. Someone entered the space, not someone who looked like me, but someone who felt like me. Same frequency, same essence, but stronger, brighter, calmer. In him, I saw everything I had ever wished to become: wholeness, peace. And there was a gentle light in him, the kind that had walked through darkness, yet held no bitterness. I asked Eli, "Who is he?" And Eli answered, "He is you. A version of you that has awakened, healed, and fully lived out your soul's purpose." I stood in silence. I had once hated myself and despised who I was for every fall, every failure, every time I ran from the truth. But when I looked at him, I saw no judgment. I saw hope. If I can become him, then maybe I still have a chance. Then he stepped forward. He didn't speak. He simply placed his hand over my heart, the place I once believed was empty. And I felt it, a new rhythm, not the beat of a heart, but the resonance of a soul being gently called awake. Eli said, "You don't have to become someone else to be loved. But if you choose to love, truly love, you'll become everything you ever dreamed you could be." I cried, not out of regret, but because for the first time, I felt worthy not for what I could do, but simply for who I am. And then the council asked me, not with words, but through vibration, "Do you want to go back?" The question came not with pressure, but with profound stillness. I didn't answer right away. I turned to look at him, that awakened version of me, and asked, "If I return, can I become you?" He nodded, not with a head, but with a pulse of light. And he spoke just one sentence, a sentence I will never forget. "I'm waiting for you. Inside you." In the next part, I'll share the moment I chose to return, not because I feared death, but because I realized someone was still waiting for love I hadn't yet given. And you'll understand, the soul never forces you, but it will always whisper when you're close to losing your way. I came back not to keep living, but to love differently. They didn't force me. There were no commands, no ultimatums, no lines drawn in cosmic sand. Just one gentle question, but it echoed like a drumbeat in the very center of my soul. "Do you want to go back?" I looked at Eli. His light remained unchanged, peaceful, patient, full of grace. Then I turned to my future self, the version of me who had awakened, who had healed. He didn't plead. He didn't persuade. He just stood there, a silent answer that needed no words. I began to think about what it meant to go back. Not the pain, not the illness, not the loneliness. I thought about my mother, the woman who used to tuck a wet wipe into my jacket pocket every day in grade school, though she never once said, "I love you." I thought about my younger sibling who texted me every birthday for 5 years straight, even when I never replied. I remembered their last message: "You don't have to be strong. I just need you to still be here." I thought about a friend, someone who meant everything to me during one of my darkest chapters. I never said, "Thank you for saving me." I let them walk away in silence. Because deep down, I didn't believe I deserved to keep them. I hadn't spoken the words. I hadn't loved the right way. I hadn't forgiven. I hadn't given back. I hadn't fulfilled what my soul came to earth to do. So I whispered with the pure will of my spirit, "I'm not going back to live. I'm going back to give the love I once withheld." Eli looked at me, and the light within him shifted warmer, wider, like a lantern swinging open. He didn't say goodbye. He simply placed his hand over my heart once more. "If your soul is an instrument, let it play the melody this world is aching to hear. Don't just come back to life. Come back different." There was no pulley gate, no tunnel of light, just the unmistakable feeling of being pulled back, like a thread being reeled in between two layers of existence. The light was gone. The sound was gone. Eli was gone. And then a single, heavy thud as if I had landed inside my body with the full weight of my soul. First came the weight, so heavy, then the cold, then the blinding white light, the smell of antiseptic, the beep of a heart monitor, the sound of someone crying. I opened my eyes. Everything was blurry, then slowly came into focus. A woman sat beside me, eyes swollen, small, trembling hand resting on mine. My mother. She didn't speak. I didn't either, but her eyes said everything. "Thank you for choosing to come back." And in my heart, I wanted to say, "Thank you, Mom, for never stopping your love from reaching for me even when I never answered." But I didn't say it. Because some things don't need words. Sometimes, a single look and a soul that's finally awake is all it takes to truly understand each other. And I knew there was something I still had to do. Not to become successful. Not to prove anything to anyone. But to live as a being who had been awakened from his darkness. In the next and final part, I'll share with you something extraordinary. Who is it really that called me back from the other side? And why I believe sometimes it's us from the future who return to save our souls before it's too late. The one who called me back was a version of myself I never believed I could be. When I woke up, they told me I had come back from the dead. My heart had stopped for several minutes. My brain had been deprived of oxygen. The doctors called it a rare case. But I knew. It wasn't luck. It was an invitation from the other side. And I had said yes. In the weeks that followed, I spoke less. I didn't rush to tell anyone what I saw, where I went, or who I met. Not because I was afraid they'd laugh, but because I needed time to believe in myself. And then one day, I opened the notebook my mother had left on the hospital nightstand. An old journal, its pages filled to the edges with her shaky handwriting. She had written to me every single day while I was in a coma. Day 3. "Noah, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll keep talking because if the soul is real, then it won't stay silent forever." Day 12. "Today I didn't pray to God. I prayed to you. If you can hear this, come back. Someone here still needs you. Still hasn't said enough love." I sat there silent. The tears didn't fall because I was moved. They fell because I realized something much deeper. Maybe it was that voice. Maybe it was that love. The one I heard in the moment I left my body. But somewhere deep inside, there was still a question I had never spoken out loud. Whose voice was it? The one that first woke me in the moment of death? Not yet, unless you choose. That voice. It didn't sound like my mother. It wasn't Eli. It wasn't any soul I had met on the other side. Until one night in a dream, I found myself standing again in the room of light. And someone walked in. Made of light. Radiating peace. But not a stranger. I knew him. It was my future self. The one who had healed. The one who had lived fully on purpose. And then, he opened his mouth. Not to say much. Just one sentence. "Wake him up." I jolted awake, heart pounding like a drum. Not from fear, but because for the first time, I understood completely, it was me. The future me. The version I always doubted I could become. He was the one who came back to save me. He never gave up on me. And the voice I heard that day, the one that pierced the veil as I slipped from my body, wasn't a stranger, wasn't a guardian, wasn't even a divine being. It was Noah who had walked out of his darkness and returned to guide me back to the path I was born to walk. It wasn't anyone else. Not a superhero. Not some almighty figure on a golden throne. Just me, the version of me who had finally learned to love myself enough to come back for me. And now, I share this story with you. Not so you'll believe I died. Not so you'll admire me, or fear what I saw, or turn any of this into something divine. But so you'll remember, maybe you've never died. But how many times have you lived without listening to what your soul truly needed? Maybe you've never seen the light. But how many times have you stood in the dark and heard a quiet voice whisper, "Don't stop. Don't lose yourself any further." I didn't come back to be a good person. I came back to be a real one. To love differently. To speak the words I never said. To forgive others and myself. And if you've made it this far, maybe your soul is sending a signal too. Maybe it's time to wake yourself up. If you've ever had a moment, subtle yet profound, where you felt like someone was quietly calling you back to yourself, share it in the comments. Because maybe your story is the bell that wakes another soul just as they're about to fall. And if you want to keep walking this journey together through stories like this one, hit follow or subscribe. Because what you're searching for might not be out there somewhere. It may be waiting right inside you. I died to remember who I am. And I came back to awaken those still asleep in the middle of their lives.